We are actually happier when we give stuff away, including our time and our money and our resources, because like what, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and then all my debt and all my incoming in my bank accounts and all the people I owe emails to and all the things I was going to do don't matter anymore. It just doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
And so what are you going to do with all of that if you just accumulate it in something that is bigger than ourselves?
I'm Elysia Skye, and this is the Brilliance Method Podcast. Through mindful, motivational, and often hilarious conversations with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and executives, you'll discover new ways to create your life on purpose. Hello, my friend. Welcome to the Brilliance Method. Today, we are hanging out with someone who is so near and dear to my heart, Sarah, the pivoter, Kalmeta. She is a change advisor. She is a speaker. She is a brilliant human being, which you are about to experience. And she isn't afraid of change or hard work or having fun. And those are some of my favorite things about her. I got dressed up just for you, Sarah.
Thank you. I saw the NASA sweater and the stars, and I was like, this is perfect. I'm also wearing the sweater that you got me, the dog mom sweater, because I'm totally leaning into that identity hard.
I love it so much. So for those of you watching or listening and wondering, like, why am I wearing a NASA sweater and a headband covered in stars? Sarah is equally obsessed with space as I am, and probably more so. And it's one of the things that we bonded about. And Sarah has a history in the aviation industry, and that tends to be where she winds up speaking on stages the most, not exclusively, but it is so exciting because there's not a lot of people who are connected in that industry and who are passionate about it. And I'm so curious, honey, like, where did your fascination and love with flying and all that happen?
You know, I think it was just something I was born with, or maybe in a past life I was involved, because my first two words were literally for star and airplane. My mom realized that I was saying sta over and over, and then I started saying ba, and she thought I was babbling until she realized that I would only say ba for the moving ones. So I was from a young age just staring up into the sky, and I loved going to any museum that had anything to do with space. We went to different NASA centers, the Air and Space Museum, and then I did Civil Air Patrol when I was in high school. So it's been there for a long time.
What is that? That wasn't even an option when I went to school. Where did you grow up?
So I was in Sedona, and there's chapters all over the United States, but it is an auxiliary Air Force program. And so what you do is, it's once a week. Is kind of like ROTC, but that's when you're in college. So this is for high school students, and it follows the ranking system of the U.S. Air Force. And so what you do is you learn about aviation, you go up on discovery flights, you do search and rescue, you learn things. I was in Arizona, so we did desert survival training, but based on where you are, that will obviously differ. And you are having an opportunity to present and get promoted to the different ranks, so that when you complete the Civil Air Patrol program, you could have a scholarship opportunity for your university if you follow the ROTC path, or if you were to go enlisted, you could start out at a higher pay grade.
Wow. Okay. So when you were a little girl, what did you want to be when you grow up?
Of course, astronaut. That was like the number one thing. And then fighter pilot. And, back then there were not that many role models for young girls, for astronauts or fighter pilots. And I had glasses in second grade, and my eyesight only continued to get worse. And, the astronaut thing, I started to lose a little bit of steam with, because I was like, oh, it's a lot of math. I don't
It is a lot of math. That's so funny.
want to do that much math.
We would have been such good friends in elementary school. I know I'm a little bit older than you, but I always said when I grow up, I want to be an astronaut. And then it was around third grade that I realized math was not my strong suit. And I struggled with it, and maybe a little bit of dyslexia when it comes to numbers and things. And I was like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to be an astronaut if I'm not good at math? I better pick something else.
Yeah. I mean, I could do the math, but I just, I was like, this is not what I want to spend my time doing. And then with the eyesight thing, even when I was in Civil Air Patrol and at university, I was told by a few recruiters, if it's you and another girl, let's just say it's a woman, and you're neck and neck, everything is even, every single score, if her eyesight is 20/20, we will choose her. I mean, of course, why not? You're investing millions of dollars into this person to be flying $1 million asset. You want to have as low risk as possible.
Sure.
And at that time, LASIK was not accepted, et cetera, et cetera. And so I like flying, but I have to admit, I am not a diehard. I will do anything to get up in the air. And so I looked at my friends who would literally eat McDonald's or ramen so they could get like one more flight hour every month. And I saw the career path of an airline pilot, after, and I was just like, nah. After about 20 minutes, I'm pretty bored. So unless I'm like actively flying this thing and I'm doing, all of the Thunderbird and Blue Angel type of flying, I'm not really interested in that path. I also showed up to the Embry-Riddle in Prescott. And at that time, whoever was there during my like, let's go look at the school trip, I looked at this kid's uniform and I thought to myself, I'm going to have to listen to you. That's not going to work, because his uniform looked worse than mine. And I was like, I'm 17 years old and I'm taking this shit seriously. What are you doing? And so my personality is I'll beg for forgiveness, not ask for permission. And so, obviously special ops or other things might have worked for me, but I quickly realized like, let's play to more of my strengths here than like make my life difficult.
100%. If we were in Star Wars, you would be leading the rebel force.
Yeah.
You would be going like through all the crazy little, buildings and corridors and up and down and let's save this person and all that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So when I got my first tattoo, I was 14 years old and I went up to Gainesville. I had a fake ID and I wanted to get a tattoo for my mother who had passed away. And my sister had said to me, before you get your tattoo, I just need to let you know, when you go up in space one day, the ink is going to spread under your skin, potentially. So just know that if you really want to be an astronaut, your tattoo might get fucked. And I was like, ugh. And that's kind of when I made the decision. And I was like, I'm not going to be an astronaut. Let's get the tattoo. And it was like so weird that was my deciding factor. It's so different than yours, but the dream is there. And I know that in whatever interesting way it's going to happen, Sarah, you are going to be in space. And I visualize that for you and I see it. And I'm so excited for you. However that works out, turns out. I don't even know like how big that is still one of your dreams, but you're going, honey. You gotta leave me a secret note, on Mars or on the moon or something, so I can go find it maybe in the afterlife.
I mean, I definitely would still love to go. I have examined my reasons though, and I think that like a couple of years ago when we first met, a large part of I distinctly remember saying, like, if Pete, if you come home and all my stuff's here and I'm just gone, I'm probably on a super secret space mission, and I've just said yes, and I will see you when I get back. So like, let's come up with a secret code that I can leave you, because I'm not supposed to tell you where I'm at.
How did he feel about that?
And he laughed, and I was like, I'm not joking. And he's like, I know you're not. But now we have SAS, and now I've also done a lot more inner work and realized that a large part of that was still my escapism. Interesting. And I don't want to escape my life now, because I fucking love my life. It's great. Even with the hard bits, I still love it and welcome it all. So I would still go to space. Like if someone knocks on my door right now, I was like, hey, I'm not going to be like, oh no, sorry. I've got, my dog's play date and, I've got to do this email. I'd say, yes. How do we make this happen? But no longer just like gung ho, forget everything else and do that. And also as you start to navigate the kind of politics and different, new space versus old space, and like just what's happening. I mean, we can see certain astronauts are still up in space that, are there longer than they intended to be. So there's a lot of other things that to take into account now that I'm considering. And I've thought a lot about we've talked about this, like, what about after you go to space? Well, then what's your goal after that? And who are you? And how do you use that? And I've really leaned into that more, and I have my answer now. So, space is cool and all, but if it doesn't happen, I'm also like, that's okay, because I've got these things. Like, I don't need that to be the pinnacle, and I don't need to keep chasing. I just finished rereading Siddhartha. Have you ever read that? Herman
I
Hesse?
did. Yeah, I had a wonderful English teacher named Mary Bevolacqua, and she
Great
had us
one.
read that in ninth grade.
Yes, I read it
Mhm.
20 years ago, and I just took it with me on this backpacking trip I was on. And the outrageous thing was, one of my crewmates on this expedition, his name is Jay, and he, like, literally, I'd be reading this book, Jay Mehta, and I'd look up at him and I'd be like, oh my God, Siddhartha is literally right in front of me. And no joke, he used to be a very religious, like, in an ashram, meditate all day. That was his life. And then now he runs a huge business, family business. And I'm like, this is wild. Like, literally, the story is right here with me. But in there, they talk about, it's in the seeking, you actually don't attain your goals because you're so rigid in what you want that to be and to look like, that you miss out on everything else. And you miss out on all the small things that actually could help you get to that goal. But because it doesn't look like it yet, you say no to it, or you don't notice it. And it's in that letting things arrive to you that you can actually have these things occur. And so that's something I've been working on, is like, how do I create my own orbit so things can arrive to me rather than me spending all my energy trying to go get them? And I think about your lighthouse analogy very often.
That's so beautiful, honey. And so you've stepped into this energy of receiving. And, some people don't like the word surrender, but I love the word surrender, because
Yeah.
in surrender, it's not even like a hope or a faith. It's just a knowing. It is a trust. It is a deep trust that you are exactly where you're meant to be. And as long as you're a kind person and you're still taking action on behalf of the things you're passionate about, your life will continue to reveal itself.
Yes, reveal itself. And that's the thing. And I've stepped into my meditation practice more deeply the last couple of months. So I was part of this circle practice group, which it's always more powerful when you embark on these containers with other people. And we made a commitment to ourselves, and we were, going through these different lessons and meeting once a week. And that really shifted a lot. And then I maybe the halfway point, or about 5 weeks in, I remember feeling really great and almost not wanting to do my second meditation sit. I did the morning, no problem, but the afternoon one's almost like, well, I feel good, I don't need to. But that's where you then, like, slip off, and then
It's a
you stop.
trap.
Yeah, you stop getting the benefits. So I've kept that through, even though we ended that container, and that has helped me stay so calm, not get agitated when things are changing, because they're always changing. But before that, I was, and even in the beginning part of that session, I could feel myself just getting anxious or overwhelmed because my thoughts would spiral. And those thoughts sometimes serve you in the matrix and in the real world, right? Because you solve problems all day long. You're literally supposed to do that for your job, but it's in how do you turn that off, and how do you come back to that knowing that it's all going to work out. And we've all had instances where that happens, but we just kind of brush it aside. But your life can literally be that every single day.
Wow. So for people who are wanting to find that peace and shift and change, and you're such a change maker, and I know that's what you help these huge organizations with and big companies with, and whether it's working with an individual high up, or going and speaking in front of many, many people, you have this ability to help people see things differently, right? That shift in perception. So if somebody is feeling, wow, I just want to accept that my life is happening on purpose, on its exact path, but I want, and they can't let go in a way that feels peaceful and trust, what advice or tips or steps could you give them just to get started?
I mean, the basic thing I'll say is just take a breath, right? When we come back to our breath, yeah.
Good reminder.
The funny thing is when we're on digital devices, we tend to hold our breath. If you're replying to a message or an email or a text, you start to hold your breath because you're thinking, or you shallow breathe. And so they've actually dubbed this like email apnea because it's so common. And so just,
Ew, I had no
yeah.
idea. And now I'm so aware of it now.
Yeah. So anyone who's listening, just begin to pay attention to your breath when you're responding, whenever you're on your cell phone, whenever you're on a computer, whenever you're doing a task like that. Can you bring your awareness to, like, am I actually breathing or am I just shallow breathing? And take a deeper breath, slow it down. That's going to really help your nervous system clean out all of the, you know, junk, get all of that extra CO2 out, get more oxygen in. And the funny thing is, too, when we are breathing, oxygen is circulating our whole system, but it's actually, and our brains need the most, but it gets it last. So if you're not taking deep breaths, you're actually not clearing all of that out. So breathing and slowing down are like the best things you can do. I have this on my desk. It says breathe. And it's 3 minutes. So I just turn this over and I watch the sand, and it is so soothing. And I just focus on taking really long, deep inhales and exhales. And it's on my desk so that I can see it, and it's a trigger so that when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I've got a few minutes before a phone call, I just do that. And it really helps create a lot of extra space.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And you were
Mm.
telling me, because I just got my, I'm not wearing it right now, but I just got my smartwatch, and so you've got your
Yes.
Whoop, right? So, but I
Yeah.
loved what you shared with me about that, because so many of us are now attached and connected to these devices, and I've resisted for so long having a smartwatch, but I want to wear it at night when I sleep so I could start tracking my sleep and be a better sleeper. It's one of my life's missions. And you were telling me about this watch and the intention
Yeah,
behind
so this
this.
is not even a watch. There's no interface. You can't touch it. You can't see a time. And that's by design. It's on purpose. And so what the Whoop does, Whoop is very similar to the Aura ring. Several people have heard Aura, Oura. They're a little bit more marketed mainstream, but Whoop actually started being used at the Olympic level of athletics to track their performance. And so every little factor that could possibly disrupt performance or gain a competitive advantage, even like 0.5%, obviously at that level, that's huge.
Hmm.
So all of these metrics then, they were tracking it in Excel, and then they designed this software and this device. And so what's, you can talk to brain scientists and people out there, and, is the Aura better? Is the Whoop better? The Aura is a little bit clunky. My fingers swell if it's hot. And if I'm lifting a barbell, I can't wear it. So this is much more wearable than the Aura ring for me. Some people
Hmm.
might prefer the other device. I'm agnostic when it comes to devices, but the Aura ring also, there's no time, there's no screen. And so that's the benefit. And so with this, it will help you. Also, I know with the Whoop, because I've been using it for 6 months, I have a lot of friends in the community who use it, and I'm now sponsored by them because I just believe in their product so much. They work on circadian rhythms. It's tracking your basal skin temperature, your heart rate variability, your blood oxygen levels. You're able to see the metrics. So when I was on the backpacking trip, I was in the green 4 nights in a row, even with a strenuous exercise, and my resting heart rate went down by about 15 numbers. It was like
Huh.
mid 60s to low 50s. And the 2 days before that, I was in the red with like a 20% recovery and a higher elevated heart rate. Why? I was at an aviation conference where I was not sleeping and I had a couple drinks of alcohol. So it's very easy to see what is impacting you. And you can track all sorts of lifestyle factors like I flew on an airplane today, or I did a cold plunge, or I was in a sauna. My dog slept in my bedroom. I had a partner sleeping in my bed. It was a dark room, or I wore a sleep mask. And all of these things you can start to see. Does that actually impact my recovery or not? And for you, you get better data. So earlier in the year, I went through a period of high stress. Cold showers stopped benefiting me and they started negatively impacting my performance. Why? Because my nervous system was already too stressed and it was a shock to my system. It's not giving me the benefits. And so many people out there don't recognize where they're actually at. And this device, especially if you're a type A high achiever, that likes to get shit done,
Most of us are.
which
That this
we
audience
are,
is.
especially if you own a business, then it gives you that permission to go, oh, I'm in the red today. So instead of smashing myself lifting heavy weights or going for that 10-mile run, I'm just going to walk or do yoga or I'll meditate and journal today because I know those boost my recovery and I'll be back in the green by tomorrow. And so when I first got it, I tested it for 30 days. I was like, I'm going to listen to this thing. Everything it says, if it's green, yellow, red, I'll just hit my strain numbers and I'm not going to push. You got to stretch strain if you want to increase strain. I started sleeping better. My skin cleared up and I lost weight. Not changing my diet, eating chocolate every day. That's all I did. And I was like,
Wow.
what? Then I went through a period where I was like, you know what? Fuck this thing. I want to go for a run. I'm going to go for a run. And guess what? I stayed in the red. I stayed in the yellow. I hurt. I was tired and I didn't recover as well. And it was just really interesting because you're like a scientist on your own experience. So this is geared for you. It's wearable. You can sleep with it. You can shower with it. The charger goes over the top. And what I love is there's no screen so that I don't wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh my God, it's 3 a.m. Shit, I'm waking up in 2 hours and now your brain turns on. Or, oh, I should get up to pee. Now it's just, okay, I'm just going to roll over. There's nothing to look at, nothing to kind of disengage you for sleep. So I'm a big proponent of it. I think it's great. I have an excellent podcast, which I'll share with you. That's with their VP of Performance Science. And she dives into all of it. And like, man, the first 90 seconds of that, you're going to go, I need this thing.
Fantastic. Well, in the description of this episode, we'll put your link for this watch and the link for that episode too. Because,
perfect.
Even though this show attracts entrepreneurs and creatives and high achievers and whatnot, clearly, I share a theme of mindfulness and peace and wellness and health and resilience from a place of peaceful productivity, like what we are talking about right now. So it's so funny. We didn't even plan we were going to talk about this. And now I'm like, I want one. I want my family to have one. I want everyone I'm like, whatever this thing is, should I return it?
Yes.
So that's great, honey. And I love your dedication to all of it. And, when we first got on before I hit record, we're sipping our coffee and we're just talking. You're so peaceful. And I'm like, Sarah, how's your energy today? You're like, I just got back from this backpacking trip. I am so peaceful. But it's so funny and you'll be on the show more than once, I know, but to hang out with Sarah, to hear Sarah speak, like you are so often like, high energy, let's go, we'll go to concerts together or whatever it may be. So I'm so happy that I get this version of Sarah today. We have so many different versions of ourselves and it's just so perfect. And it's so in alignment. And how fun the timing of it all that you just got back from this trip and here we are talking, because it could have been a completely different conversation a month ago or a month from now.
Yeah. And it's really stepping into that. How do you want to feel? And so many people are chasing happiness or, like, let me reach my goals. And I've just been really working on simplicity. Like this morning, I cleaned off my desktop and put all the files into folders. And it's like, I have a beautiful red moon and stars on the thing. And it's like so calming to look at. Yeah. And my barometer lately has been, if this is not bringing me peace, then I don't think I want to be a part of it. Unless it's very intentional and I know this is for a short period of time helping me get to this other place, but otherwise I don't want to step into that. And being in the meditation as well, that's also helped me just reduce the charge. So it's not like way up here and then like way down here where I'm crying in my closet, because what goes up must come down. I can still feel within those ranges, but it doesn't hook me and take me out completely like it used to.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for sharing all of that. And especially about, the cold showers aren't serving you. And, there's so much buzz right now about cold plunges and do this and do this and do this. But people are forgetting, like, we are so unique, each and every one of us. Yeah. And we have to honor that. And I have always resisted cold plunges. If I have to take a cold shower, I just won't shower. Right. That's what headbands and dry shampoo are for. It's like, it is what it is, even though I don't do a lot of dry shampoo because of, all the chemicals and stuff. But just because it works for somebody else doesn't mean it works for you. And you're really giving everyone that permission today to just follow your own blueprint of bliss, so to speak, because that's what it's all about. And you had even told me earlier when you had your dog sleep in your bed with you, it showed that was an improvement, right? That was better.
I'll say she doesn't sleep in my bed, but she sleeps in my room. But
Mhm.
my Whoop does tell me that I get a 9% boost in my recovery when she's in my bedroom.
Oh my
And it's
goodness.
because, you're getting entrained and your nervous system is soothing. So what I love about the Whoop band is it's really recalibrating you instead of focusing on calories or steps or more things to do. It's like, how am I being? And is this going to serve my nervous system or not? So it shifts the focus, because when you have a healthy nervous system, that's when you can actually feel happy or calm or joy or pleasure or the sense of accomplishment. When you're not in that, you'll get all these things and it'll just be like a drug and you go to the next thing right away. That's
Yeah.
how I know.
My friend Lisa Greenfield is she reads hands, and she's so incredible. She has a lot of celebrity clients, and she looked at my hand and she goes, "You have the addiction marker." And I was like, "I do?" I'm like, "I don't care about drinking. I've never smoked cigarettes." I'm like, "What am I addicted to?" And then all of a sudden I'm like, "Everything."
Yeah, it's life. Yeah.
Work, my friends, worrying, right? All the things.
Yes, we can
Shit.
literally become addicted to stress. And so there's a really
Mhm.
great book by Heidi Hanna. She's a brain scientist, The Sharp Solution. And there's her table of contents is one page. So it's like really relaxing for your brain to read it. But she talks about that stress addiction cycle. So if you've ever said the words, I work better under pressure, or
Mhm.
like, I don't actually do good work until it's last minute, and I thrive in that environment. Yeah. Right? Then that means that you're literally addicted to stress. And the interesting thing, so when I embarked on this, I told you before, the container and the meditation, about a week in, I don't smoke. I had a craving for cigarettes, menthol cigarettes specifically. And I was driving and I was like, what? That's so weird. And then I wanted a Zyn, which is those things like nicotine pouches you put like to replace the chewing tobacco.
What?
I was like, I've never even had a Zen. My friends have told me about it. They're like, oh, yeah, you get a buzz and you can focus and whatever. But guess what? I was detoxing from caffeine. So my brain immediately went for the next dopamine circuit it could think of that was going to give me what the addiction of the caffeine was doing. And caffeine, I went off caffeine like last year or 2 years ago, and then would slowly, once in a while, have it. But last year started like creeping, like, okay, one in the morning. Okay, maybe another one midday. Oh, now I'm having pre workout and caffeine. I wonder why. I'm like, I can't change this.
Mm.
I'm like, oh my God, way too much. But luckily, it wasn't too long of a detox process. But it was fascinating how my brain immediately just, what's the next thing that I can go that might give me that feeling?
Wow. I imagine for people in the aviation industry, they have to, at least it's for their benefit, pay attention to their body in ways that other industries, unless you're in like fitness or athletics or something, aren't doing that. And
They should. They
they
do.
should, they should. And I can imagine like how much coffee, all of us drink every day, working online, but like if you're in space, like managing satellites and ships and or even airplanes, right? If you're a commercial
Yeah.
pilot or private pilot, I know you work a lot in the private sector. Oh my gosh, didn't even occur to me how much coffee those people consume, right?
Right. And the corresponding shifts in the cortisol, alcohol. So another thing with the Whoop is the joke is that it'll make you a day drinker, because you'll start to, if you stop drinking before like 6, it doesn't impact your sleep unless you've had like a lot. But you'll see. I remember I had 2 drinks and I slept through the night and I felt okay in the morning. I wasn't hungover or anything, but I got an alert saying that my body was in the high stress state from 2:30 to 4:30 in the morning,
Because you're
because it's trying to
processing out the alcohol.
process. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's trying to process this alcohol out. And so I thought I was fine, but obviously my nervous system and my whole system is trying to process this, is quite literally a poison in my system. And so I've noticed if I shift it earlier, and I'm not a big drinker anymore anyways, and I'm drinking water, then I don't have that affecting my sleep. It's still happening, but it's not affecting my sleep. And so that is like another critical thing. Just this, honestly, sleep is the most powerful performance enhancing drug you can ever have. And the
I know.
latest sleep research too is outrageous. How many years people have gone by saying, even doctors, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. It's not that necessary for function. It absolutely is. And if you sleep less than 6 hours a night, 10 nights in a row, it's like your system is up for 24 hours. And you might as well just have a couple drinks and go to work, because you'll be cognitively better off than that. And most people don't sleep more than 6 hours a night.
Isn't it crazy? I'm very medically intuitive, and sometimes I'll get hits for certain supplements or herbs or oils or things that my body is craving. And my entire life, I have not been a good sleeper, and I've shifted that recently and really dedicated my life to being a
Right.
great sleeper. Oh my gosh. And so, but last year I got a hit to take these herbs or supplements, and I was like, what is this? Right. And so I was doing more research on it, and ultimately it comes down to it removes plaque from the brain. And I'm like, I have plaque in my brain, right? So I'm talking to my guides and really channeling in, and it's like, why do I have plaque in my brain? Because I've barely slept my entire life, and then plaque in the brain leads to Alzheimer's. I'm like, fuck, this is serious. Like, oh my gosh, here I am in my early 40s at the time that we're recording this, and I don't want to have Alzheimer's,
Oh,
and we don't have kids. Like, who's going to take care of me? And
right.
I want my husband and I to just like grow old and die together, and then explode, hopefully on, and some asteroid or something. I don't know. Uh, like, can't we just
I
die?
mean, maybe that's our journey to space. Maybe we just, our ashes go up there.
That's fine. That's totally fine too.
Totally fine too. Sprinkle it
It's funny.
along.
When I was in television production full time, I know that now they're actually working on this, but it was like 2008, I think, or 2007. I wrote a budget on let's shoot a scene in the moon. And I was like, maybe I'm going to be the first person to actually film something in space for
Oh,
commercial film and television, right? And I budgeted it out. It was so many millions of dollars to do it. And I'm like,
oh yeah.
well, if and when anybody ever wants to film a narrative scene in space, like, I'm your girl, come and get me. I selfishly also want to talk about airplanes, because I have worked through a lot of anxiety in my life around flying.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you some questions about airplanes, but
Okay.
before we do, could you just tell us a little bit about how you wound up working in the airline industry?
Well, I did go to Japan a lot for work. I was based in Hong Kong for 10 years. And so I was in Asia for 13 years between mainland China, Singapore, and Hong Kong. And I traveled all over the Asia Pacific region. So after I graduated from Embry-Riddle, I had studied Mandarin as a part of my minor degree in Asian studies.
Why?
I had always been fascinated. This is where the Japan part comes in. I was always fascinated by Japanese culture, and I wanted to actually learn Japanese, but was very accurately told, unless you plan to go live in Japan and use the language live there and work there, it's not very useful and valuable on the global scale.
Hmm.
Why don't you consider Mandarin? And Embry-Riddle, the only two languages they offered were Mandarin and Arabic. So I studied Mandarin, and I got to learn about a lot of different Asian culture, but we primarily focused on China and the development of, the customs and practices in this language. We learned simplified Chinese. And then when I was interviewing for jobs, this private jet company based in LA saw that, and they had aircraft based in Singapore and Hong Kong. So they hired me. I got sent out to Singapore to train the new staff after a couple of years, and I just loved it. And I decided, you know what, I want to use the language from this side of the globe rather than from the US side. I can always go back. Let me go and explore for a little bit. That turned into 13 years.
Wow.
And, the private jet thing, I fell into that completely by chance. My concentration at school was actually airport management. But then I did an internship at McCarran International, which is now Harry Reid in Las Vegas.
Hmm.
And I realized, oh, right, this is a government job. And shit moved really slowly.
That does not work for Sarah the
That
Pivoter.
does not work for me. I remember very distinctly we were doing like a lunchtime TSA check, and this was before iPads, people. So I had a paper with a pencil that I filled in, the time, and I like checked the stopwatch. How long did it take for this person to get processed? There was no like anything. And then we had to go manually and put that into Excel. And I came back after this hour, and I had like 4.5 pages of data, and everybody else had like 1.5 pages. And I remember this older guy, probably mid 40s, and he's like, Sarah, you don't have to work that hard. This is a government job. And I deadpan straight looked him in the eyes and was like, that's why I'll take your job when I graduate. And everybody was like, whoa, because he also was kind of like, he rested on the fact that it was a government job and he didn't have to do that much. And I was
Wow.
just like, okay, well, you don't have to do much, but I'll do it.
Good. And good
Um,
for you for wanting to change that standard too.
right. Because it's like we will fall to our lowest common denominator. And if we go in with that mindset, we're not going to innovate. We're not going to improve. We're not going to get better. This is not like a box tick. And so if we
Mm-mm.
can bring our full selves and find out how we can make the environments we're in better, then everything improves. And that's the same if you're the janitor or the cleaning lady or the mechanic or the pilot. It doesn't matter where you are on that spectrum of job. If you're being significant in what you do, because there's a ripple effect and you impact the people around you, and you're tying into something bigger than yourself rather than like, oh, I just do this. Like there's no
Mm.
just. Remove the just.
Right. And for people who are pursuing that impact and significance and helping others, they are actually happier people. Like it's
Yeah.
scientifically proven they're happier people. Their lives feel more fulfilling.
We need something that is bigger than ourselves, which is why when you go out into nature on these big expeditions, or you're very active and a volunteer, like we are actually happier when we give stuff away, including our time and our money and our resources. Because like what, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and then all my debt and all my incoming in my bank accounts and all the people I owe emails to and all the things I was going to do don't matter anymore. It just
Mm-mm.
doesn't exist, right? And
Yeah.
so, what are you going to do with all of that if you just accumulate it and hoard it? There's so much tension in that. Like, I got to hold on to this. And so, when you relax and just show up doing a really great job, people notice that. And that often leads to, I've had some of the most incredible opportunities because I had that mindset and that attitude. And I kept that standard for myself no matter what I was doing. Like last year, I worked at Trader Joe's. I was cleaning the bathrooms because they switched jobs.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone after was like, wow, the bathrooms can look this clean. I'm like, yeah, they can. Like, why can't you take pride in everything that you're doing?
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be the big thing that you can get enjoyment and satisfaction and fulfillment from. You can get it from the small things that you do too.
You do. And then you leave an imprint on
Yeah.
people. I know when you got so busy with speaking gigs and you left Trader Joe's and they were like upset.
Yeah.
You're leaving. It's like,
And like I get messages still from some of my colleagues, which is amazing,
yeah.
and I had a few really nice messages from some of the Gen Z colleagues that I had who were like, you know what? I learned so much from you. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with me. And that's meaningful too. Like you don't know the impact you have on people. I had someone tell me that because I shared about getting my poem published last year, that after like 30 years, he finally started writing poetry again. And he went and did slam poetry. And then he
Hell
messaged me
yeah.
on LinkedIn. He's like, could I take some time off your calendar? I know you're really busy. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And he told me that. And I was like, this is probably the best Zoom call I'm going to have all week. Like,
Mhm.
what? You decided to go back and like you're doing slam. And he was so lit up and he just wanted to share. And it's like, you don't know the impact you have on people. And so you showing up, being your full self, allows other people to do the same thing.
Please, everybody, please write it down, stick it on your mirror. Every little bit of energy that you contribute, not to the detriment or sacrifice of yourself, but when you can go above and beyond and make that the norm in a healthy environment, everything shifts. We're in Hong Kong,
Yeah.
and you said you fell into the private jet industry like almost on accident. How does that happen?
Yeah. You'd think that I would actually have some awareness of it, having gone to an aeronautical school. Legit, there was an FBO fixed based operator on our airfield, and I'd see some of these smaller airplanes come in, and just like, I don't know, it just never occurred to me, but none of the teachers spoke about it. It's a little bit better now. There's more push from the industry and awareness, and we have to, because people are not going into these fields. And so there's a pilot shortage, there's a mechanic shortage, and there's just a shortage of people who want to be in that environment. Part of that is also sustainability of not just the planes themselves, but the industry and people wanting to be a part of something that is not going to wreck their nervous system and
Hmm.
like not be a fun place to work. So there's been some toxic culture things to work through.
And you're
But
helping with that. And
yes.
I've seen it. It was so funny. We were both at a conference in Miami,
Yeah,
and
that was so cool.
the conference was in the same like 5-star hotel, and I saw like, oh, there's an aviation conference. I wonder if Sarah's here. And I texted you and you're like, oh my God. I was leaving that day. Like,
Yeah.
so crazy that we're here. But like your contribution in this, right? In helping people be healthier and happier in their industries is essential, honey. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm really pleased. I'm really proud of the industry for where they're at now with the mental health conversation. I moderated a roundtable with the Aviation International News' event last week, the Corporate Aviation Leadership Summit. And I was so impressed. Obviously more male than female at this event. And we had probably at the tables that day, it was 2 women to 10 men. And everybody was like, I want to do better. This isn't my language. I didn't grow up. It wasn't safe for me to have emotions. Hell, I don't know what I'm feeling half the time. But my kids have really shown me how much it's different. And we need to change the narrative in the industry. And so it was really powerful to watch them stepping into this, going like, I'm not sure if I'm doing it right, but I want to do better. And, I'm learning and I want to bring this to my team and make sure we don't repeat the same mistakes. And the FAA has just released, there's some new pharmaceuticals that have been approved for mental health, but also talk therapy is no longer penalized. I mean, it used to be that if you said you had a problem, they just revoke your medical. It's like, we are human beings. We are designed to talk to people. We need an outlet. And so there's now better pathways. There's more conversation, and it's going to take a while for the stigma to be completely resolved. But I like to reframe mental health to mental performance. If we have a conversation about physical health, you don't immediately start talking about all the things that are wrong with you, right? We're looking at like, how do we get better at our run times? How do we take care of our heart? How do we improve our breathing? We look at all of those things, but we don't immediately focus on the negative. Yet with mental health, that's what we do. And that's just because also we didn't know that much about the brain and the mind up until recently. And so there's still a lot of science that is new that is not yet mainstream. The whole left brain, right brain conversation,
That's over.
that's been over for a long time.
Yeah.
But people still have that narrative and refer to, oh, well, I'm left brain. It's like, no, you have a brain and you're both. But we still talk that way. Or like this whole, I saw this headline yesterday. It was great. Did your parents ever tell you that you have to wait 30 minutes after eating before you could swim again?
Yes. And I have a pool and I always hear it in my own head. Like I'll have a snack and then I'm like, I can go in the pool.
Yes. No, the headline was basically like, science has finally proven that this is false. Mythbusters, you can go swimming after 30 minutes. I don't know if the parents just wanted like a little reprieve from making sure their child didn't drown, but it was not correct. But that's science. That's
right.
Technology. As we increase our capabilities and understanding of this reality, I mean, look at AI, that conversation that's happening. I'm part of a big event that's taking place next month called the Future of Humanity Summit. And like the people that we have there talking about AI and the future of humanity and how we're going to integrate these tools, it's just mind blowing. And this isn't the last, I mean, like 100 years ago, we were still in a cart and buggy,
Right.
most people.
Right. And people don't realize, when they're like, I'm afraid of AI, it's like AI's been flying our airplanes for I don't even know how long.
Dude, those pilots are pushing buttons and turning knobs. I'm telling you.
That's why
there's still a lot of education and they're there for when things go wrong.
Yes.
But we're also now in the era of everyone has been trained with a glass cockpit, meaning with all the instruments and digital things. They're not mechanical. They're not tuned into the feeling of the airplane. They didn't have to manually fly and hold a straight flight path. It's like a Formula One racer. They are actively driving and their arms are tired when they're done because they are having to really work to control the car. That's not how flying is anymore. And so, we just have different skill sets and it's great because it's allowed us to really go into this new expansive place. But it also means that when those systems fail, because like all technology, at some point, there will be an issue. Are we able to handle those issues? And like, what do we do? Like there's a lot of narrative around that, as a lot of these World War II pilots are retiring, and that experience of mechanical flying is less and less. How do we make sure that we optimize for safety and things? But legitimately, you don't need any pilot in the cockpit. Like, you could just do it on a UA, not a UAP. That's the
I'll
alien stuff.
edit. You can just do what?
No, you don't edit that out. Keep editing. We just need the aliens to fly.
You're not wrong. And some of them probably are.
They're probably like, man, humans, we can do this better than you. Let us show you. What I'm trying to say is, like, the unmanned vehicles, the UAVs. There we go.
What does that stand for?
Unmanned aerial vehicle. Back in the day, the public needed, we had 3 pilots, we had a flying engineer, we had a navigator on board the airplane. And it was like inconceivable that you would never fly with all of those people. We don't fly with all of those people now. We just fly with 2 pilots in the cockpit and the cabin crew. There's no navigator in the cockpit. There's no engineer. Some of the private jets have a flying spanner, meaning that the engineer will fly with them, or at least a lot of the routes, so that if something goes wrong, they've got their person on site rather than relying on a third party all the time. But we accept that. I mean, when I was a kid, I was told, don't talk to strangers on the internet and don't get in a car with strangers. I literally use my device every single day that I need a vehicle, because I don't have a car, to call a stranger and get in their car to go somewhere.
True.
You know, like, that's now acceptable.
Most people have no idea about any of this. Just like what you said about, we just blindly get in an Uber. We just blindly get on these airplanes and we have no idea what's going on. And maybe that's for the best, especially if anybody has airplane anxiety.
I mean, it's all about public acceptance. I mean, there's a lot of technology that, for example, I was in DC, went to the Spy Museum. In the 70s, they had a spy camera the size of a dragonfly, and it actually looks like a dragonfly. They were using that in the 70s. We only got that type of technology in the last decade, right?
Wow.
So there's a lot out there that has to be introduced slowly so that the public doesn't panic.
Like aliens.
Right. So I'm just waiting for Optimus Prime to, like, come give me the cool handshake. Like, it's going to happen one of these days, But if you think about it, like Star Trek, all of that technology was so revolutionary. And now we have that. We've had that with Bluetooth, right? When it came out, it was like, whoa. And now we have it. Pretty much everything except the beam me up Scotty type of technology and actually flying through space to other planets on a regular basis is already in our day-to-day lives, right? So a lot of it is just
that holodeck, though. On Next Generation, the holodeck.
Yes.
Right. You're just like, I want to go to Spain in the 1940s. It's like,
that would be great. Or just to even, like, transport so that I could be, like, sitting with you by the pool after we finish the podcast.
I want that.
Right?
Yeah.
I know. One of these days.
Oh my gosh. Okay, wait. So I've interrupted you so many times. So how did you accidentally get into private jet? And if that's not that interesting, we don't have to talk about it. But I think it's fascinating.
I was waiting for the job from McCarran at the airport to come through, and they just, literally 6 months after the first interview, were like, congratulations for your second interview. I was like, I can't keep waiting. What are you guys even doing? Wow. So I was just applying to all sorts of jobs on the school's job board. It was called Eagle Hire, because we were with Eagles at Embry-Riddle. I think I even applied for, like, a technical advisor role. It was just something. It was in Scottsdale. I was at the Prescott campus. I was kind of like, okay, well, I'll keep something in Arizona until I know where I'm going to go. And they saw my CV and my background. They realized I would be a better fit for their charter sales and dispatch role. They flew me out to LA, and I was like, whoa, this world exists? What the heck? Like, this is cool. And then the rest is history.
Wow. So for people who are not familiar with the private jet world, and I only know a little bit about it because my husband's in the music industry, so he's hopped on his fair share of private jets, which is pretty cool. I have not been in one, but I think about when you see in the movies, it's like, 4 people sipping whiskey, like don't have to wear their seatbelt, probably didn't even go through security. Everything's cush. Like, what's the deal?
There are different areas. They're called FBOs, fixed base operator, but essentially think of it like a different terminal where the private jet passengers will go through. So they'll clear customs if they're going international and do the security checks there.
I literally dropped Kalen off at Van Nuys Airport in front of a metal fence. He walked through the fence, they looked at his ID and he walked on the plane. Like there was no metal detector, there was no security. And I called him. I'm like,
So for part 91 flights, you don't need to do that. That's a private flight. But if it's a charter flight, then usually you would still need to
okay.
do
I
security.
felt like unsafe about that. I was like, honey, can somebody on your plane with you like have a gun? And he's like, yeah, they could.
Yeah. But the thing is, you have to think about, if you're thinking about the mindset of people, well, first of all, the caliber of people flying on these aircraft are different than like the masses, right?
Correct.
And if you're thinking about like a terrorist activity, you're not going to target an aircraft that has 2 to 3 people on it,
That's true.
right? It's about mass hysteria. So
I wasn't
it's
actually
very different.
worried. I was like fascinated. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I remember sitting in on a TSA meeting back in 2008 because the TSA wanted to like ban golf clubs because in the private jets, like the luggage compartment is not completely sealed off. And we're like, why would a billionaire go get their golf club to pummel their pilots? Like that
and
makes
not
no
know how to
sense.
drive the plane, right?
That makes no sense. And also, if they're going to do a terrorist thing, again, you take one private jet into whatever building, like, okay, you're going to cause some damage, but you're not creating like a 9/11 situation, right? So it's a
Sure.
very different demographic, very different psych profile of
Correct.
like what is going to be happening and what is different. And they just wanted to do the lazy way of like, let's do this blanket. And it's like, no, that's not how it works.
No, and then
Right.
you're going to piss off a lot of people who want to bring their golf clubs, and they should get to.
Right. So like if I'm going to go take, I mean, they don't do this for Greyhound, but let's just say you're taking like a bus
Amtrak.
somewhere,
Mhm.
right? Or Amtrak, right? They've got some basic security. There's like things that you go through. But if I'm just going to get in your car, Elysia, and you're like, let me see your purse, turn it out, I'm going to be like, no, right? What's wrong with you? Like, so it's a very different conversation.
Yeah. Though in high school, I did tell my friends, like, if any of you are bringing alcohol into my car, I will be very upset. So
Well,
I
yeah,
did.
because the open container rules in this country, like,
Right.
I'm not going to get a
I
DUI
did
for your
check those.
dumbass.
Oh my gosh, Sarah. Okay. I really want to know, when it comes to your life, how have the pivots in your life changed you?
Mm. Well, I've had a lot of them. I was just on a webinar the other day with a brain scientist, and they were talking about like major life events and the corresponding like stress score that you get with them. The number one is like death of a spouse. It's like 100. And then it was like divorce from a spouse, separation from a spouse, and like all of these things. And I'm looking at this page and I'm like, oh, so in 2018 to 2019, I literally had like 6 of these major events occur. No wonder I was so stressed and I had all these things. So be kind to yourself as you're going through pivots because, we like to be strong. We like to pretend like we know what we're doing, but it really is a big deal when these things change, right? And when you wake up to how you've been on autopilot, that often causes a like reorientation of your values. Have I checked in with those things? So every pivot that I've gone through has really been a kind of like chrysalis situation where I go into a little cocoon. It feels like I'm mush. It's hard. It's dark. And then I emerge and I'm like, oh my God. Oh, okay, cool. I can fly now. But you can't fly right away. You got to like let your wings dry off and all this stuff. And maybe the sun's not out yet. So you got to wait a little bit longer. That's going to happen every time you go through change. And it's going to feel like that every time. We tend to think, as we learn, we get better and our skills improve. And so you become better at navigating the changes. But until you can learn how to be calm through the change, you will always feel that chaos, right? Your priority through change should be, how do I stay calm here and create space between action and what I'm going to do to respond to my environment? Because then you build self-trust and you have these capabilities. So each change has really taught me how to accept reality for what it is and not try to force it to what I think I want, because half the time you get what you think you want and you're like, what is this? This is terrible. Spit this out. Like, gross.
Like you managing an airport. Gross.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
No thanks.
Thanks.
That sounds
No thanks.
horrible. And
Mm-mm.
thank you to anyone who does manage airports. We appreciate
Yes.
you.
We do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyone who works with pilots, I appreciate you too. You have to learn how to control your temper. I'm quite sure of it. I was a very angry 21-year-old for a period of time.
Uh,
Um, but yeah, just the pivots have really helped me to learn how to be calm through change. My well of resilience is now deeper. It takes a lot more to kind of shake me from things. And it's really given me this gift of playing with different parts of myself and seeing what still fits, what doesn't fit anymore, and maybe what part was kind of dormant that I want to bring online now that I, for some reason, didn't think I could or wasn't even aware existed or didn't know how to. And so that's what I would say the pivots have brought.
yeah. And sometimes you just need someone else to be a mirror for you, like you were for
Yeah.
that gentleman who's now doing his
Yeah, slam
slam
poetry.
poetry, right?
Yeah.
It's so funny you mentioned like rage in your 20s because you and I have talked a lot about forgiveness. And, I'm a Course in Miracles student and I know you've explored it and, to in depth. And forgiveness has a huge contribution in how we choose to pivot. And, we're practicing the 4 agreements and not taking things personally and doing our best and all that stuff. But when we can actually say, I am not interested in holding on to anger and
Mm,
giving this situation power or making it real, from a
yeah.
spiritual perspective, then
Yeah.
everything just gets easier.
Absolutely. And a lot of times that forgiveness is like directed at yourself, but you project it out onto other people. And I remember being asked, if your mom were to die tomorrow, who would you be angry at? And I was like, myself. I wouldn't
Mm.
have a place to put it. And so then I went and started exploring that. And it's when you don't honor your own commitments to yourself, that degrades self-trust. And, when you try to hold yourself to some standard that doesn't exist except in your mind, that's where we tend to punish ourselves, the perfectionism. So learning how to have compassion for that child or that teenager that might be running the show behind the scenes, then that's when we can start to like let those things go and learn to love all the parts of ourselves. So I actually have this little thing right here on my desk. It'll be backwards in the thing, but it says, I'm still learning to love the parts of myself that no one claps for.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Will you text that to me?
Rudy Francisco. Yes, I will. Because of course we tend to highlight the best parts, and even in telling our stories we'll highlight or talk about the parts where we don't look so bad.
Mm.
But what about the parts where like maybe I was a bit of a brat or a bitch or a narcissist or an asshole or selfish? Like learning to love those parts too, and owning them, that also takes the power away.
Wow. Oh, and that really can be healed a lot through meditation. And I know meditation is so important to you. It's a powerful tool in your life and I love it too. So why do you recommend it to everyone?
It really helps you to slow down and become aware of what reality actually is. It's this moment, and it's all the sensations you're experiencing. It's not your brain, it's not your mind, it's not your goals. It's not what you did last year or yesterday. It's this moment right here. And the more you try to avoid this moment right here or cling to this moment right here, that's where the suffering comes in. So the meditation has really helped me to just really get into right relationship with myself, because when you sit with yourself and you pay attention to those sensations and how you feel, you can't hide. And these things will start to come up. And that's good. It's good to have awareness. And it also, there's a lot of benefits that are part of that. Like you will become calmer. You will be able to sleep better. You'll become more productive. You'll have more clarity. And those are just the side benefits of meditation. Meditation is really about like getting to know yourself so deeply. It's allowed me to really understand how my mind works and understand that my mind is not reality. My mind likes to talk a lot of shit. Everybody's does.
I have one of my courses is called the meditation method, and It's beginner stuff all the way to advanced stuff, like all the way up to like mediumship and healing and all the things. And I've had a lot of people say to me, I can't meditate. I think too much. Or, I deal with depression and anxiety. So like, I know I should meditate, but I don't, I have a hard time with it. I don't want to. And what I say back is similar to what you just said, Sarah. And it reminded me, if you are willing to get to know yourself better through meditation, you will be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
At the abundantly loving being that you truly are. Because a lot of people don't want to know themselves that well because they don't like themselves very much. And it's like,
Right.
that's just like human bullshit, ego, and like you said, anger misdirected. And it's like, if you get down to the core of who you are a fucking miracle. I have dealt with flight anxiety. The last panic attack I had was in 2019 on an airplane. I always get on the airplane and I do these things. So tell me if there's anything I could be or anyone else who deals with flight anxiety could be doing better.
Okay.
First of all, there's an app called Turbly, which tells you what turbulence to expect. I always sit in the first like 15 rows, either over the wing or as close to the front as possible so that the flight is a bit more stable. And I figured that out because like when I've gone on roller coasters, which I also don't love, like when I'm in the back, I feel it more. So I'm like, this must be true on the plane. And so I've asked different flight attendants and pilots and they've confirmed that. Some have said sit right over the wing and some have said sit in the front. I want your opinion on that. When I get on the plane, I ask the flight attendant, hey, are we expecting any rough air today? And they'll say yes or no. So as long as I know they know ahead of time, I can breathe through it. And I could go, oh, they knew about this. It's going to be fine.
That app is great. I've not heard of it, but that sounds like a great tool for people who might have anxiety that would benefit from knowing, the way that the air flows over the wing, that is going to be a more kind of stable part. But if you think about it, think about like a surfboard diving into a wave. That front of the surfboard is like piercing through, and that's going to be more stable than the back end. Because then like as the energy is passing through, now everything's like, unless the core is really strong, right? So there's a little bit to that, and it's kind of like it'll ripple through and so reverberate. And so being in the front generally can be a bit better. There are still clear pockets of air, which mean that nobody knows that they're there. But in every weather briefing, the pilots will be given a report of where to expect turbulence. And so that's why wearing a seatbelt, even when the seatbelt sign is off, is still very important, because while they know those pockets, there's also those clear pockets. And that's a great analogy for life, right? You can know some things, but you can't know all things. And some things are just going to come out of left field. So always keep your seatbelt on. And as much as possible, don't be getting up when the seatbelt sign is on, wait until it's off. Meditating, again, is going to help you with that. Like, meditating before you take off, or anytime there's turbulence, focusing on your breath, just bringing that orientation back to you. And know that, these aircraft are designed to withstand those forces. And with turbulence, it's very unlikely that turbulence is going to cause a significant issue to the aircraft where it can no longer fly.
When it comes to meditation, sometimes when it's really rocky, I visualize that the airplane is actually a train and we're on a track. And sometimes it's just bumpy on the tracks. And that helps me.
That's pretty much what's happening. You're just on the track in the air.
That's crazy. Yeah. And then I also, how I do grounding cords in my meditation. So sometimes I'll just imagine this grounding cord coming from the plane, like all the way down into the center of the earth. I'm like, it is stable. It is not falling off this grounding cord. It is rooted. It is grounded. I am safe. And my friend AJ has his pilot's license. And he's like, I'm going to take you up flying and you're going to actually fly the plane. And that's going to help you get over your fear. And I'm like, probably not. That sounds like a cold plunge. However, I'm open to it. And he said, like what you said, turbulence and weather is very unlikely to mess with the plane. And then he said this, and it scared the shit out of me. He goes, a bird can take out an engine.
Yes.
Before lightning. I'm like, oh my,
I was just about to say that, and I thought, but a bird strike. Have you seen Maverick? Right.
The new
Maverick.
Yes.
Yeah, she has to eject because of a bird strike.
Fuck that. How do you? Right? You can't avoid that.
No, you cannot. And so that's why there are around airports, there's there's rules and things that they have to consider for the environment, but also bird strikes are more dangerous than weather. Yes. But you're also more likely to die by a donkey than ever being in a plane crash.
What? So, why would I die by a donkey?
Because it could kick you in the face. I don't know. Like literally, you are more likely to be killed by a donkey than be in an airplane crash. So you've got that.
Fair. Our imaginations go crazy, and the news does not make it cute, but like there was I think it was like a Southwest flight, and like the window cracked and someone was getting like sucked out. Like, why does that shit happen? And I know it's so unlikely, but can you just give us any tips or takeaways to just remember, like, we're safe and it's fine? I just need to hear your voice, and I'll play it over and over. Just like, you're safe. It's fine, girl. Calm down.
You are safe, girl. Calm down. It's going to be fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You can auto-tune that and make it a song even.
We will. Oh yeah. Kaylin should do that.
You should. Yeah. So look, when humans are involved, there's human error. There's human factors. And, Boeing has had a lot more of those because of, certain things not being looked after properly over years and years of that focus, not having a certain focus. That doesn't mean that now every single, it's not like one bad apple makes everything else rot, right?
Correct.
So, again, this is why it doesn't matter what you're doing. You might think that, what you're doing doesn't matter, but if you're the person that's doing that one step and that seal is not done properly, that could lead to, over time, an increase of pressure. I mean, think about the submarine accident.
So tragic.
That just recently occurred. And I knew one of the gentlemen on that submarine.
Oh, honey, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so, but it's like, if it's not rated for that, or, this is why we really there's a lot of science that goes into this. So really, no matter what you're doing, show up, do the job correctly. Don't find ways to skip corners, because that's going to be what leads to, over time. It may not happen right away, but it will happen over time. And the same thing goes for, like, oh, I'm just going to eat one piece of chocolate, but I'm going to do that 20 times a day. All of those things start to build and it becomes a slippery slope. But for the most part, like, we are still very safe. The FAA investigates all of these things. They use these reports, the safety incident number. Like, you can start looking at different news articles. Aviation International News is great to look at. And they do reports on the safety, and they don't only focus on private jets. They focus on the entire industry. And then that can give you a sense of, it's like, I was just reading this morning, because I have the Daily Stoic 2021 version from Ryan Holiday, where he was writing all these things and he created a book out of it. Okay. So COVID, pretty tragic. There's a lot of lives lost. In 20, 30 years time, we're going to go like, whoa, but that number won't really mean anything to us. So there are just 123 million cases globally. That's a lot. But when you consider we have nearly 8 billion people, that is 1.6% of people have gotten COVID.
Yeah, it's true.
So
perspective helps.
Having that perspective, and, doing your research on what airline you're flying. There are certain airlines when I go overseas where I will not fly them, just because I don't trust their maintenance schedules, what they're doing. Some of that is because of the culture. Some of that is because I have insider knowledge on just like what's happening there.
Are there airlines that you love flying?
Oh, yes. Singapore Airlines and Emirates.
Wonderful.
Phenomenal airlines.
What about commercially in the United States?
United would be my favorite in the United States. Their app just makes it so easy. I've got their credit card also, but it's just so easy to, book on miles, get your miles back if you change. Anytime you have a change, I have lounge access. It's super easy and smooth. And they've really, like, there was a period where I'd come back from Asia and be like, God, United, what are you doing? And they have turned a corner, and they're like phenomenal. I really love flying United.
That's wonderful. And so you feel really safe with them. I mean, I know you feel safe with all of them.
Actually, I mean, I feel safe with all the US airlines, but yes, United is my fave.
That's so cool. Okay, love. So one last question before you go. If you choose to play the lottery, and when you win the lottery jackpot, what's the first thing you do when you find out you win? And I guess second part of the question, what do you do with your time now that you're a gajillionaire?
The first thing I'm going to do is buy land and build different, like, little container tiny homes on it, where there's communal spaces and private spaces.
Fun.
And
who gets to live there?
Well, I've already got some people like in mind, but I would also have spaces where, like, you can hook up your RV and you can come in for periods of time. So it would eventually grow into a place that's, got passing through, but then also people who live there who are stewards of the land.
Wonderful.
Which would also allow me to not be there full time. And then I could have multiple, like coordinate with some of my other friends who I know want to do this type of thing, like homesteading. And, like we've got one in, I don't know, the Netherlands, and we've got one in France, and we've got one in Thailand, and we've got one here, and just wherever, but then we can kind of do that together. And so creating more off-grid time, there'd be a building with Starlink, but we'd like encase it so you only got signal in that building,
I like that.
not
You're
on the
giving me
property.
ideas for my North Carolina compound. That's
Yes.
awesome.
And that's what I would do. And I would just create this like place where we're really living with nature and having this off-grid time and like co-living there, but also spread out far enough where it's like you can have your privacy and your thing, but then we've got these communal spaces to go to. And so no matter what your shtick is, you've got something there for you. And eventually maybe have that be a center where there's, somebody managing it, and there could be guests and just run programs and retreats and things like that. Because for me, I really have been leaning into this, like I love the survival training stuff. I think there's something very empowering about knowing how to filter your own water and build a shelter. I mean, this backpacking trip, we were open air camping. So it was just sleeping under the stars.
Wow.
And getting into the rhythms of nature. And so I really want to do more of that combined with the leadership training that I'm doing, and create these really profound experiences for people. And it just keeps coming up. And then I got, talk about manifesting. I talk about this to an agent in the morning. And then I have a call with a potential client who I spoke to a couple weeks ago in New York. And he's like, could we go for a hike during this session? And I was like, I got you. I was just saying I want more of this. Yes, let's do it that way. Because you also activate different parts of your brain when you're not just in the traditional environment for where you want to apply these things. Because all of these skill sets, like leadership skills, they're parenting skills, they're friendship skills, they're relationship skills. You're able to transfer these across into different areas. And so really embodying them and building that self-trust for yourself and capability, and seeing your capabilities strengthen over time in that type of environment, help you put context, a tactile feature to these things rather than it just being an intellectual exercise.
Wow, honey. Well, thank you so much for being such a champion for humanity and who we are on a personal, physical, spiritual, and mental level. It's been such a joy to have you, and I hope you will come back and we will get into many more fascinating stories. We've barely touched the tip of the iceberg of all the things that you've done in your life and that you are planning to do. And you are such a joy, and I love you so much.
I love you too. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, sweets. Before we stop, is there anything you wanted to share or add or that we didn't touch on before I let you go?
I mean, there's tons of things I'd love to share, but just a reminder for everybody to just take a deep breath and smile to yourself. Take little moments through the day and pepper that in, particularly when you don't feel like smiling, and you'll start to notice some big shifts.
Perfect. Well, on that note, babe, this or something greater.
This or something greater.